Thank you everyone for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bianca Clifton and I am co-founder of People and Purpose, the specialist HR recruitment firm. Just before I introduce a fabulous Penny Locaso, some general housekeeping. We have a lot to cover today. So if you do have any questions along the way, please pop them in the Q&A section, and anything that we don't cover off in the conversation, we will get to at the end if those questions haven't been covered. Just quickly, in terms of getting the most out of this session, especially if you're new to Penny's work, please remember that her extensive experience might feel a bit overwhelming. So just absorb and listen. You won't be able to implement everything discussed today, nor would you want to. The goal is to take what resonates with you and understand that many of these are shared human experiences. This journey is about chipping away at it over time, much like Penny has done for the last few decades to reach where she is today. So I'm delighted to be joined by Penny Locaso, a leading behavioural scientist and coach. She's dedicated to empowering 1 million female leaders to change the world for the better and to become role models for the next generation. With over 20 years of experience in the psychology of adaptability, she specialises in transformative behaviour change, helping professionals amplify their impact, influence and careers whilst avoiding burnout. Having left a 16-year executive career to found hackinghappy.co, Penny partners with global brands like Google, Microsoft, and is a published author, Harvard Business Review contributor, and Singularity University faculty member. Penny, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Bianca. Two of my favourite things, people and purpose, so it couldn't be more aligned.
I love that. Let's just jump in. Do you want to start with your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Oh yeah, okay. I'll try the whistle stop tour. So I always say I feel like I've had two lives, and I feel like I'm now on the third iteration. So I think of things in like software updates. So there was version 1.0 where I had a very successful career as an executive in Shell. Started there at 22, ticked all the boxes I was told would make me successful, and got to the age of 39 and was sitting there going, how is it I've done everything that I was told would make me successful slash happy, and yet I feel exhausted? I realize now I was burnt out. I feel unfulfilled. I don't feel, I mean, I enjoyed my work. I worked with amazing people, had great opportunities, but I was looking for more meaning in my work. I was selling oil and gas when you cut it down to the basics. And basically, I had a moment with my son in the backyard. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Sorry, my screen has frozen, so my apologies. So yeah, I had a moment in the backyard with my son, and I stepped out and I said to him, it was a day off. I was working 4 days out of 5 over in Perth. I said to him, come and hang out with me in the kitchen. Let's do something. It's our day together. And literally he looked up at the age of 3 and he said to me, I can't, Mum, I'm too busy. And it was like a dagger through the heart. It was like that moment where everything that I'd been feeling, but been too afraid to acknowledge, kind of came to fruition. And I was like, what does busy tell a 3-year-old, and where do you think he gets it from? And it was like the moment where I was like, I don't want to be that role where he feels like he's just in the background. So I did something crazy. And within 7 months, I turned my whole life, 10-year career at the top of my game. I relocated my family from Perth to Melbourne and started my own company. And that was the beginning of
I've got you back. I think we're just having a few connection issues. Can you hear me okay?
yeah,
Yeah. All right. All right, let's just keep going and see how we go. Let's talk about, I know that we've spoken about it kind of offline, but let's talk about kind of the season of life and kind of setting that scene for where we're at as individuals, and understanding that, and then being able to kind of focus on what we need based on where we're at.
My clients, one of the things that we start with is who are high performing and are great at getting is women that don't feel completely exhausted and can be present and in the moment, because our brains never stop, because we're always, my clients is the season of life that we're in. So rather than sitting there, you feel you should be achieving for the age that you're at, actually stepping back and acknowledging the season of life that you're in and what that means in terms of what you need to think good about yourself, to you not burning out and to you actually prioritizing what I think of. Often I'll have women that are when we're kind of hitting that real success in our career where it's about to truly take off in a big way, and they'll go and have kids, and then they're like, it's the season of life that you're in. And if the kids are the priority now and being
I think what we might do
the mum is the priority, that's absolutely on what is aligned for you in that season. You to know that it's not.
is, I think we're just dropping in and out. What we might do, can I just ask in the Q&A box? Yeah, okay. Can everyone hear me okay, but are they finding that Penny's dropping in and out? Yeah, okay. Okay, perfect. All right. Just bear with us for a sec. Hey, Penny, do you want to log? Yeah, maybe. We'll give that a try. Thanks, everyone, for your help. It's hard to tell when I'm on the other end what's happening. So hopefully this will work. I'm super pumped to be able to talk to Penny and cover off everything. So we'll just see how we go. Do you want to unmute?
Let me know if that's any better. Otherwise, I will jump on from my phone.
All right, well, let's just give it a sec. All right, go again for me. Just talk to me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I feel like it was dropping in and out though a little bit. So just try a little bit more, because if not, we might move to your phone.
No problem.
So with that, let's do that first question again, because we've kind of missed it, was chopping in and out. So can you articulate again about understanding the season of life that we're in and how that's kind of one of the fundamental pieces initially to understanding where you're at, and supporting you to where you want to be?
Yeah, so I always say you have to let go to lean in. And I think so many of us as women are hanging on to a hell of a lot in terms of all the things we think we should do. I call it the layers of should. And unfortunately, the layers of should leave most of us feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and like nothing we do is ever enough or good enough, because I suppose people are getting what's left of us rather than the best of us. And so, what I talk a lot about is starting with, if you're trying to gain alignment in your action and do things that are intentional and impactful through your career and in your life, just acknowledging the season of life that you're in.
Mm,
What I mean by that is there are many seasons to life
mm,
and they come and go. Yeah. And when you allow yourself to ground in the season of life that you're in, it gives you permission to prioritize what is most important to you in that season of life.
mm,
So, for example, women look at me and go, I want to do all the things that you want to, that you've done.
mm,
However, I've got two small children at home and I'm trying to manage my career and my life. And I'm like, yeah, I'm at home with a 15-year-old who I share with my ex-husband 50% of the week. So I'm a part-time parent. And
mm,
so, what I can do in this season of life is completely different to what I could do in the season when my son was small and he was my number one priority in terms of quite dependent and more in need of me being around. So, just
mm,
acknowledge the season of life that you're in as a start point and allow yourself to let the other stuff go,
mm,
knowing that you don't have, it's not a not ever, it's about
mm.
saying that stuff's in the parking lot just for now
Yeah.
to
And I
create.
think, yeah, when you've got that hindsight, it's definitely easier. But I think it's one thing that comes up consistently when we're working with women, HR career professionals, and that will be the first thing that I will go to with them to just understand or expose that to them that there is a season of life and it's not the decisions that you're making aren't going to be forever. And it's about making those decisions around what's going to best support you with where you're at now and what realistically are your responsibilities. So then you can have some type of success with where you're at now and not feel like you said, like you're failing in all areas of your life because it's unrealistic.
Absolutely. And I mean, I do this all the time. I've even do it for myself. I don't teach anything that I don't use on myself. And one of the things that I had to do recently was acknowledge that the season of life that I'm in right now, I've called it the season of compassion for multiple reasons. One, because I'm studying my thesis, my honors psychology thesis, and it's taking me about 28 hours a week to get it done. And it's an intensive 10-week block. And so I've had to reframe my mindset and say this is the season of compassion where I'm studying compassion, ironically. I'm interested in compassionate leadership and I'm writing a lot about that. But what I need is compassion for myself and to acknowledge that for the next 10 weeks, my priority is being a student
Mm. Isn't that
rather.
so funny? Yeah, we learn all these things and we try to apply it to external situations, but actually, like the work is with ourselves. It always is with ourselves.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And that's hard, like a challenge, it can be confronting. And that's why I mentioned at the start, just if people are kind of new to this or you've kind of been floating around, because I've been obviously like looking into the space for a while and interested in it, and then meeting you kind of blew my socks off. I was like, oh wow, just in terms of your research that you've done and how you articulate it and how you break it down, um, it it's so true, and it's really interesting how we operate as human beings. Um, so kind of just let's talk about kind of happiness and mindset really. You say that in your book that happiness isn't a destination, but a way of being. Can you unpack what that means?
Mm. So when I wrote the book, which was pre-COVID, ironically, but it's still some things still hold resonant till the current time. My definition of happiness, and it still is that you can ride the wave of every emotion that life throws at you, knowing you can come out the other side just a little better than what you were before. And the reason I speak to that, which is quite different from happiness being, I'm cheery and up all day, every day, which is just one, it's BS, and two, it's just not possible and it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And the science tells us it's not healthy. The reality is that happiness, or the happiest people in the world, are what are called emo-diverse or emotionally diverse.
Mm,
They are the people who allow themselves to experience every emotion because the reality is life is going to throw crap things at you.
mm,
Yeah, you're not always going to have good times. That's just not how the world works. We all know this.
mm,
But what happens is you have the skills, the resources, and the support structure in place to be able to process, not suppress,
mm,
process the good and the bad in
mm,
a way that enables you to progress in life, to move on
mm,
and not be held back by those things.
mm. And just talking about that, so this is obviously an area that I'm quite interested in. So just to unpack that a little bit more, can you just explain, because this is relevant for every single person here because we're all human beings, can you explain the nervous system and the relationship with emotions and just to articulate it so people can understand, I guess, what it can look like in terms of when you are having an emotion and what happens with your nervous system, and then potentially when you're talking about being emotionally divergent, how you can actually do that.
So the first thing I would say is that feelings are not facts. Feelings are information. And I think when we acknowledge that, it gives us the ability to look at them differently. Because I think often feelings can feel so overwhelming that they feel finite and like they're real. And the reality is that the way our central nervous system and our brain is designed, which is all part of the one system, is that when we feel triggered in any way, shape, or form, or threatened, however you want to process it, what will happen is your body is designed to keep you safe. Okay. So often when we're triggered, and I studied trauma with Dr. Gabor Mate, who's one of the most renowned trauma therapists in the world, for the past year. And the work that he does is what we found is often when we're triggered in a moment, what triggers us is often, it's not often what's going on in the moment that is the problem. It's the emotion that experience triggers within us, and our physiology recognizes it and goes, what did we do last time we felt this threat? How did we behave? And so often how we respond in a moment doesn't have a lot to do with the moment. It has a lot to do with our belief systems and how trauma has embedded in our system, right? That's why there's a whole book on why the body keeps the score, which is phenomenal if you haven't.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So when you're triggered, what happens is that your central nervous system goes, right, we're not safe. How do we get safe? And what will happen is most of us will have a default position. And so there's a few options in terms of how this works. And you would have heard of them. You may not have heard of one of them. There's fight, obviously, where you kind of step up and take whatever's in front of you on. There's flight, there's freeze. And then one that's kind of been emergent in the last maybe 20 years is fawning, which is very prevalent in women. And what fawning is people pleasing overdrive. So some women, when they feel threatened, will just try and, how do I keep the peace? How do I keep everyone calm and make this go away? So what happens is when you're triggered into any of those states and you feel threatened, your rational brain gets overridden. So your ability to think long term, to make really good quality decisions, is it's obliterated. Your brain goes, how do we just get through what's in front of us? It puts us in survival mode. Now, unfortunately, when you feel fear or you feel triggered, even if that threat is imagined, so it's not even real, your body will respond the same way. It's why, right? So I always say, back in the tribal days, this is what would happen. The central nervous system would be activated in this way where it puts us in survival mode just to get us out of that situation when the saber-toothed tiger was at the door. Now, when you lose your mobile phone, literally your body responds the same way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not a real threat. Yeah, it might make you feel uncomfortable, but unfortunately for many people, it puts us into that irrational mindset and impacts. And it's why being overloaded, being overwhelmed, being stressed or burnt out in your job is extremely dangerous. One, for your physical health, without a doubt. There are so many wonderful things you can manifest when you're burnt out in terms of, because your central nervous system is constantly in that triggered state. It's
so right with what you say, because I used to think that doing this type of stuff was a luxury, and then you actually understand the science behind it, and you realize that your quality of life and how you show up and who you are, if you don't regulate your nervous system and have all of those other cups that are filled, for whatever term, but if you don't do that work, then you are going to be reactive and you are going to be in that state of fight or flight and be reacting to every situation that comes up. So you've got obviously the long-term stuff that you can do in terms of understanding where you're at with your nervous system and how triggered you are. But what would be some of so say you have someone who's about to go in and, I don't know, do a presentation or have a challenging conversation. And they kind of want a quick fix as well in terms of being able to calm your nervous system down and get it out of that amygdala part of your brain and get your executive function working properly again, so you can think and do what you want to do or get the outcome that you want to. What would be some of the kind of quick tips that you think are effective in terms of regulating the nervous system?
So the number one tip is accessible to all of us. It's completely free and it's damn easy, but unfortunately we forget that it's an option, and it's proven to be the most effective way to bring you back to what we call homeostasis, which is that space where you feel grounded, like you're at one with the world and you belong, and that is to breathe.
Yeah.
And when I say to breathe, I'm trained as a yoga teacher as well. Yoga is my religion. I've been doing it for 20 years. It's what keeps me sane. So I've done a lot of breathwork training, and I really like, there's two I really like. There's box breathing, which is basically, it's like imagining you're breathing around a box, and you only have to do 4 rounds of either of these. So it's breathe into the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4. Just repeat that. So that's the first one, box breathing. And that is proven with Navy SEALs, with elite athletes. There is so much science behind how that resets your nervous system. And
I use it several times a day. So
there you go.
Yeah.
The other one I love that I learned through my yoga is Viloma breath. And this is even quicker and simpler. And it's basically breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, and then reverse it in through your mouth, out through your nose. And so what happens is you're taking the focus away from the overwhelm or whatever's going on in your body, and you're bringing yourself back into the present moment. That is all we're trying to do when the central nervous system is triggered. How do I get back in this moment, right here, feel my feet on the ground, and know that I'm actually safe? I'm not under threat. The other thing that I would do, but it's something I would take offline, and I am a massive advocate of this, because one of the things that I see consistently, and I think it's why we have so many mental health issues in our society, is that so many of us now live in our head, and that leaves us disconnected from our bodies, because we've become really damn good at suppressing how we feel, because it's too complex, it's too hard, and it's not quick to fix. So therefore we just squash it down, hope that it will go away. And unfortunately, that is not an effective strategy. What it ends up doing is, as I said, it will actually hyperstimulate your central nervous system over time, and you'll end up exploding in a situation where you don't want to. So having a really simple practice to process your feelings when you've got the space to, and you only need 10 minutes. There's a beautiful process from Tara Brach. You can look it up online. She's a phenomenal person in the domain of trauma, and it's called RAIN. So the acronym is RAIN, and it's basically you sit down with that feeling, you recognize the feeling. So I name the feeling, you allow it to be present. So I go, hello, fear, welcome. What do you have to share with me today?
Yeah.
You investigate the feeling. Like, just sit with it. Don't be a participant in the feeling, be an observer of the feeling, because you are not the feeling. Okay.
Yeah.
The feeling is just present. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last piece, which is the N, is nurture yourself with self-compassion. So knowing what you now know about this feeling and having processed it, what would nurturing yourself look like in this moment in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I love that. And I think just for those listening as well, with what Penny's saying about observing, I think it's a journey as well, because I have started doing kind of like similar work. And so I'll cry, or I'll have, because you're not used to it. And so you might find when you're doing it initially, because you do have fear in terms of actually looking at something, because you do feel like you are that feeling. You might be overwhelmed by it. But as you continue doing that practice, then you can kind of look at it and observe it and not be scared about it and process it and then move on from it.
But it's like anything, I do a lot of, I've been doing weights for, gosh, probably 30 years, weightlifting. Yeah. And it's like, I always look at this stuff. It's all like building a muscle at the gym. It's practice. The problem is if you don't practice. So many people say to me, I'm not good at this stuff. I tried it once, it doesn't work. Unfortunately, the work is never done. And sadly, I'm here to tell you, pain is the pathway to pretty much everything you ever wanted. All the things that you resist,
Yeah.
stuff that is the big opportunity is often the stuff that scares us.
Yeah.
And your system will be working against you, but you need to just understand how your system works. And whilst it thinks it's protecting you,
Yeah.
it's okay to train it to realize that it's okay.
And that's one of the questions. So I'll jump to that now because I wanted to explore fear with you, because I think as I get older as well, I realize that the things that I'm scared of are the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And you can't just kind of force, I think historically I'd always just forced myself to do it. And then you get to a point and that doesn't work anymore because of everything else that's going on. Yeah. And you just get so emotionally drained and it just becomes a bit overwhelming. So I'm really interested if you can kind of explore fear with us in terms of like, what is it? Why is it there? And then how we can use that to actually discover what we really want.
Fear isn't a way, I mean, the simplest way to describe fear is it's an innate warning system it's part of our physiology, it's part of our evolution, and it was designed to keep us safe, to help us survive and keep our species alive. Reality is it's pretty much the same as what it was when we were back in cavemen days. Unfortunately for us, how it presents and manifests in the everyday, because most of us do not have our lives threatened on a regular basis, means that it is now sort of misappropriated itself to things that really aren't going to have catastrophic consequences if we act on them.
But why does that happen? So if we know, so say for example, it's about you put your hand up, or your one of your leaders has asked you to give a presentation, and you want to do it, you're excited about the topic, you want to go in there, but you have this overwhelming fear. If we know that it's going to lead to an experience that we want to have, why is this fear coming up, and what can we do to mitigate that?
Clearly, there's something about the opportunity that makes us feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I said, it may have nothing to do with the opportunity. It's that opportunity triggers us in a way that takes us back. Maybe it was to when we were in grade 3 and we had to do a presentation for the first time and the class laughed at us.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're not capable. It's not that we don't know we're not capable, but because the body keeps the score, often that trigger will be taking you back to a moment where that feeling was felt, whether that moment was the same or not, and your body's going, oh, we've been here before, we felt this way. It may not be the same situation, but what did we do last time? Let's bring that back, because your body's trying to keep you safe.
And it could just be fear of being liked, or have people agreeing to what you're talking about. But do you find, I'm interested as well, and I'm wondering if patriarchy comes into this. So when you think about men and women, do you find that our fear response is the same? So are men having these feelings of fear about doing something that's not so extraordinary as well? Or are women more like, what have you found in your research?
So I think, fear is fear. It is part of being human. Like, what I would say.
But sorry, in terms of putting ourselves out there more so.
Yep.
Yeah.
What I would say is that from what I have studied, women suffer imposter syndrome at a much greater rate. And so with these sorts of opportunities, I would say often the inner imposter is what is triggering that resistance. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's rational. It's the imposter going, well, what if someone finds out I don't actually know what I'm talking about? What if I can't answer all the questions that are asked of me? What if I freeze? What if I'm not good enough? And so all of these things, and like I said, I've worked with phenomenal women, and they all still, I know I still feel it. Imposter syndrome is rife. It doesn't go away. You can't erase it. But what you can get better at is acknowledging it and knowing that it's your body just trying to protect you. And so one of the ways I've handled this, particularly before I go on stages in front of thousands of people to speak, I learned early in my work that anxiety and excitement are extremely similar emotions. And the way that the brain looks when you're feeling those things under an MRI is exactly the same. The only difference between the two feelings is that excitement focuses on the outcome being positive and anxiety focuses on it being negative.
That's so interesting.
And so here's a hack, right? And I met a racing car driver, a rally car driver in very dangerous situations, and he was saying he does this all the time, and it worked beautifully for him. So when he feels anxious or that fear trigger, he says, "I'm not anxious, I'm excited."
Mm,
And so if I'm excited about this,
mm,
how do I want to react?
mm.
Okay. And so
And
it's just a reframe.
mm,
The other thing, and I've used it, so before I go on stage, I say to myself now, when I feel that nervous energy, I'm like, this is how my body prepares itself to do a great job.
mm,
This means it matters. Like fear is also a beautiful way to notice what is really important to you. That's why I say fear is the pathway,
mm.
because the reason you're feeling some resistance is because you care about how this plays out, because clearly it has some meaning for you.
So do you think, so using this as like a hack, so again, say you've got, you're heading into a meeting, and you're feeling really fearful about it,
Mm.
that if you, because what you're saying is I definitely experienced that, and I've actually kind of come across that like in the last 12 months, like I've realized fear and excitement are the same thing. And then it's what my mind will do. So it will cascade down and start thinking of a negative outcome. But then if I pull it back and think, oh no, this is what I want it to look like, I will be excited about it and I won't have this fear that's happening here. Yeah. But similar feeling, but instead of scared, anxious, excited. So just to use this in like, so say you're walking into a situation, you feel it, you've got the feeling, fear and excitement, and you spoke about that race car driver and how you reframe it before you go out, telling your body that, but then also, do you visualize the positive outcome of what you, because I'm like, what's your thinking around visualization and visualizing what you want it to be, but using that feeling at the same time to then go into and have a successful talk or car race or meeting? What do you incorporate that as well? Would you?
I do. Look, visualization is hugely powerful and extremely well or empirically proven through science as an effective way to elevate your performance. I love sports psychology. I read about it a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been working with my 15-year-old son who's in a soccer academy around this exact stuff. So visualization is brilliant. I don't for me, and this is what you were saying at the start, right? This is what I'm giving you is like a menu of things. Pick one thing today you want to take away. You don't have to take away and implement that. Start small. Okay. So look at the menu and pick one thing. I just want to highlight that rather than feel overwhelmed with all the stuff. I do use visualization. I don't use it before I go on stage but that's what works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it could work if you were having that kind of where you needed
Without a
to
doubt.
kind of quick, like pull yourself, just have 5 minutes and then go in there and feel comfortable about it. It's something that has been proven to work. And sports
Without a doubt.
psychology, yeah, it's very
Yeah, and so fully like getting yourself embodied and saying to your body, how do I want to feel when I'm on that stage? What do I want the people's faces to be doing? You know, what do I want the response to be at the end? I think so. It's a brilliant
so
tool.
really creating that. Yeah.
Correct, as viscerally as you possibly can. Absolutely. But for me, I'm a big fan of the reframe game. Like the most effective way to shift a mindset from a psychological perspective is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is just reframing. And so one of the things that I tell myself all the time when I find myself, because we are biased to the negative, right? I think it's like for every one positive thought you have, I think there's like 9 negatives because our
Like,
system.
it's crazy. I know.
And that's kind of the offset that like it's ridiculous. And so basically that is because again your system is constantly assessing every situation for risk and reward. It's survival of our species. I think we forget that we are animals. And so one of the things that I continually say to myself when I find myself in that sort of fear state or that triggered state is I always just remind myself there are 2 ways to look at every situation. No matter how shitty it is, no matter how bad it is, you get to choose. And it's not about, again, suppressing the fact that it doesn't feel good. It's not about not allowing yourself to feel grief when you experience loss. It's about saying, there are 2 ways to look at every option. And whilst I can experience the crappy feeling and allow myself to do that, I also have the opportunity to look at this differently once I've had that moment.
So how would you recommend people to use fear as a way of discovering what is potentially could be opportunity for them?
Okay. So I do this. I love this. Okay. So pretend I'm your fairy godmother. Okay. And I can wave a magic wand and fear does not exist for 5 minutes. I want you to write down on a bit of paper the one thing that you would do if fear did not exist. The one thing. And it doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to share it with anyone. Just write it down. And then I want you to write down what is the fear that stands between you and doing that thing. And here's my guess, which is a well-informed guess because I've researched this with probably about 800 women. The top, I think, 3 fears, if I can call these off, I did it the other day, that hold women back from making change that they know could make them happier are financial instability, fear of failure, and what others will think, and not feeling enough. There you go, 4. They are
Sorry, what was it like? Not feeling enough? What do
not
you mean?
feeling enough. Like inner imposter, the imposter syndrome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Am I enough? Like, do I have enough? Am I
Yeah, okay,
credible
no.
enough?
Yeah,
Am I?
okay.
Yeah. So they're the 4 things more
So
often:
sorry, you had financial stability.
financial instability,
Yeah, sorry.
fear of failure.
Yeah,
We care too much what other people think. So,
yeah,
what will other people think of me?
yeah,
And am I enough? Like,
yeah,
am I there yet? Have I
yeah.
ticked all of the boxes to be able to be good enough to do this thing?
Mm,
And so I would look at that thing that you're not doing out of fear, and I would ask myself, what is one tiny micro step that I could take that would move me closer to that thing? And the reason I say that is that one of the practices I'm a huge fan of, and again, proven time and time again to be effective, the most effective way to treat fear is exposure therapy.
mhm.
Okay. And so everyone talks to you about learn to get comfortable with discomfort, which is a really great idea. But how do you actually do that? And so micro bravery is how you learn to do that. And again, we're going back to building that muscle. This is your resilience muscle. We are all born with a set point of resilience, and it's different for all of us, but we can all move that set point higher through practice. And micro bravery is how. And so micro bravery is doing one small thing every day that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, that moves you a little bit closer to that thing you really want that you're terrified of.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter how small it is. Don't compare your act of micro bravery to anybody else.
Mm.
One thing every day. And here's what I can tell you to be true. The more you do this, the more you will step into bigger acts of courage over time, and the greater your confidence will grow, because confidence is equally a muscle.
Mm.
It is not set and it's not fixed.
I love that micro bravery. Now I'm going to ask for an example. Obviously, you've broken that down. So when you gave an overview of where you had of your story at the start, we lost a lot of that. Obviously, I know it, but thinking about where you are now and where you started on your journey and what it felt like, can you give an example of some of the small steps that you were creating back then
Yeah.
to what you are able to do now, just to give people, I don't like just just to share with us to know this is where you started and this is where you are now. So then we feel like this can be achievable for us as well.
Absolutely. I haven't forgotten what it was like, because it was terrifying when I turned my life upside down.
Mm.
So the first thing that I would say is, if you had have told me 10 years ago when I left my corporate career that I would have done half of what I've done, from TED Talks to Harvard Business Review to being published in American Journal of Psychology to book deals, you name it, I would have said you were nuts. Okay. And the only reason I've been able to achieve those things is through this practice. That is the first thing I would say. It has been foundational to me getting opportunities I never imagined possible. And it's what I teach my clients every day. So in terms of what I did in the early stages, so when I left and started my own company, here's another secret. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, you run your own business, Bianca. I think we all want to act and pretend like we have an idea when we start a business. I've been running multi-billion-dollar businesses in Shell but it's not the same as running your own business. So I had no idea. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to try something different. So I was like, how do I build credibility? Well, if I associate myself with people who I think are credible, who are aligned in values, that might be a really good opportunity. So I was like, okay, well, what would collaboration look like? So what I started to do, I was like, I turned my life upside down in pursuit of happiness. I knew that I wasn't the only one looking for more meaning. I wanted to help women find that meaning whilst I was trying to do the same. So I went and found on Instagram purpose-led women who had left successful careers and started their own company to make a difference in the world. And I basically started connecting with them. I started following their journeys. And then my acts of micro bravery were as simple as reaching out and saying, would you be open to connecting around a potential collaboration? Now, I had no brand back then other than I'd worked in oil and gas. So to these women, there was probably no real benefit in working with me. And so what I decided to do was to create, again, another act of micro bravery. I was like, okay, well, I want to create a panel event and I'm going to moderate the panel and I'm going to bring these women together and I'm going to call the event Ditch the Daily Grind and leap into a career you love. Like this was the first, one of the first things I did. It was a crazy idea. I didn't pay for the venue. Like it was all done very scrappy. And I got 4 of these women to say yes because I was giving them a stage. And that was kind of like, there was probably about 50 acts of micro bravery in that across weeks and months.
Yep.
And the irony was that it was this huge success. The event in Melbourne sold out. And then I ended up doing it for the next 12 months around Australia. And that was the beginning of me expanding my network beyond oil and gas, building my credibility by association, but equally, and this was say all these things that I never imagined, it helped build my visibility as someone who was on stages, which was something no one had never seen me at, because I was moderating these panels with these, cool women. And that was the beginning, unbeknownst to me, of, a 5-figure speaking career down the track.
Yeah, and then doing TEDx talks. So yeah, it's those micro steps at the start. And so if you're thinking about, so obviously with your story, and this is what I kind of mentioned at the start, you don't necessarily, not everyone has their own journey. And there might be elements of areas of their life where they want to be more fulfilled or more aligned. So when you talk to professionals who are in their careers, and because I know I have this conversation with a lot of professionals as well, and the conversation that I will have will be around, like, it'll be that they're not happy in their workplace, but then they'll go to another workplace and they still won't be happy. And that's all, like, no judgment here. And then it's not until, so I kind of started off doing recruitment and then just came obviously really interested in how we work as humans, because I realized that all of these people were having similar experiences and taking it to the next place and the next place. And what I found out is it probably wasn't the work environment. Yeah, in some cases it is, and because you've got people who are leading different cultures, but in some cases it's not, and it's an internal thing. So if you were talking to professionals here who are feeling unfulfilled in their careers, kind of what would be some of the things that you would recommend to them unpacking to understand whether or not it is related to their career, the career that they've chosen, or whether it's more something intrinsic that they're not feeling fulfilled in, like in general life?
One of the things that I kind of centers all of the work that I do is around impact making. And so a lot of people talk about purpose, which is great, but for many people, purpose just feels so huge and overwhelming, particularly when you're already exhausted and you're in a job that you're not happy in. It's very hard because, like I said earlier, your brain's likely to be in that space where it's not having any space to stop and breathe and think. So that's probably the first thing, like, how do you create a little bit of space? So without space, there can be no change. So if you're in this state, I would say, can you, even if it's a mental health day, can you create some space where it's not space to do anything other than work on yourself?
Mm.
Okay. So that's the first thing. And like I say, a day, half a day, but create the space, because without space, there is no change. The second thing I would say is, how do you bring impact into that space? And so what I always work with my clients when we first begin is, what is the impact you want to make? And who do you want to have that impact on? And it does not have to be, I want to be like Michelle Obama and change the world, as the, wife of the ex-president. It can be, I want to bring up great citizens by focusing on being the best mum that I can be with my children. It might be, I want to create a community where people feel like they belong, because at the moment they don't. It really doesn't matter what the scale or size of that impact is, but create what I call the shitty first draft. Now, this is the other thing. High performing, people pleasing, perfectionistic women. That is what most of us are in this space. It's why we've risen in our careers. It's not a judgment, but it's about saying that often we're trying to get everything right the first time.
Yeah.
And in the domain of impact making, fulfillment, and finding meaning, there is no right path. Okay. You start with the shitty first draft of your impact statement, and that is basically saying, what impact do I want to have on who and why? That is all you need to, and just, even if it's just ideas, just get something on a page without any judgment. Allow it, give yourself permission and say, this is like 40% done. No problem. It's fine. Because here's the other catch with this work. If you want meaning and fulfillment in your work, it takes time. It is a long game. It requires marinade. It requires you to sit with how this stuff makes you feel, experiment, come back, look at it again, and adapt it and change it, because action breeds clarity. And like I say, there's no right path. There could be 1,000, even 1,000,000 paths to where you want to go to have the impact that you want to have. So don't get locked down in right or perfect. What you want to embrace is understanding the impact you want to make and giving yourself permission to experiment in order to breed clarity, to illuminate the path that will get you there.
And also, I think also the season of life that you're in.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So the season of life, and then what do you want to, what do you want to achieve from that? And action breeds clarity. Of course it does. But yeah, we're so kind of focused on wanting that final draft in the first stage, instead of actually getting scrappy and doing the work and feeling okay with knowing that this is our best for now, and we're not a finished version. It's ongoing.
Wanting to get it right will be the barrier to starting. I can tell you that right now. And I see it all the time.
Well, and so what? So how do you manage that? Is it just about being aware of it?
So this is what I teach my clients: embrace the shitty first draft. That is use that as your mantra.
Yeah, okay.
The only way I'm going to progress is by embracing. And I don't know why it is that as we get older, like when we're kids, we're so open to learning and doing things wrong and not properly and evolving in that way. But as we get older, the expectation we have of ourselves when we're trying new things is completely flawed. And I was reading yesterday, the most successful people in the world, and Dan Pink talks about this. And we are sold this concept of this linear path to where we're going and how we should know the steps to get along that path. And it's just not true. And so he talks about the most successful people. There's a project out of, or research out of Harvard called the Dark Horse Project. You can look it up. And it found that the most successful people don't follow a linear path. They zigzag. They actually say that the 5-year plan is dead. And I don't plan longer than 12 months with any of my clients, because when you start to step into this space and you start to experiment, like I was saying about my journey, what you are capable of is so much more than what you realize now, because you cannot see it. But the more you experiment and the more you bring in this micro bravery, the more you expand your vision to see what is possible. And this concept of the zigzag is about saying, I'm going to select things, not that are distracting, but things that are in alignment with the impact that I want to have, even if sometimes they don't make sense, right? In terms of on paper, or they're not what everyone else would do. But I'm going to use that and see where it takes me. And those experiments are what create the zigzag, because you'll get an opportunity that will pivot your situation and zag you in a different direction.
That's so well said. And just so what I'm thinking when you're saying this as well, one of the things that you talk about, and maybe this is like a way to frame it, because you talk a lot about framing. How does curiosity feed into that, being able to do that?
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So talk to us about that.
Oh, so when I did all my research a while back and created my intentional adaptability model, one of the things that we used to run, which I loved, was called the Curiosity Challenge. And so we went into a number of corporates, and we even went into a grammar school in Melbourne with teachers. And basically, we did a challenge around over 3 weeks around how to cultivate curiosity in the everyday. Because what we found when we were building the adaptability model was that when you ask professionals more often than not how curious they think they are, they'll like, I'm off the charts curious. I'm so curious. And then you go, okay, and when do you practice your curiosity? And they say, oh, when I have spare time. And I'll be like, okay, so how much spare time do you have? None. Right. So curiosity is seen as something we do when we have space for it. But unfortunately, that's not what it is. Curiosity is an innately human skill. And if you look at any 3-year-old child, they completely embody it. But what happens through the constructs that we're pushed through in society, be it school, be it the corporate world, curiosity is not valued the way that it should be, because it might slow things down. It might be perceived as inefficient, which is completely not true. It's where innovation is born. You know, it's where the big ideas that change the game come to play. But in the world where productivity has become the disease, curiosity is significantly diminished. And I would say the person who creates the space for curiosity as a leader will certainly have a competitive edge.
So 2 questions here. So as individuals, when you talk about that, and obviously I like you to spell things out, even though you kind of already have, but as an individual, so when we're wanting to make space for curiosity, can you give me examples of what I could do during my like how I could do that? And then secondly, I'm going to ask you, if you were a CPO or head of HR or HR professional in an organization, and you know what you know now, and talking about your intentional adaptability IAQ model. I want to know well, I guess that's kind of 2 questions. So if you were the CPO of a leading organization, what are some of the things that you would do to implement that, or what would you implement around that piece to then obviously support that organization to be successful, but get people on board to do that? But obviously, just firstly, sorry, I'll digress. As an individual, how can I be good at how can I implement that practice in my day-to-day life to get good at it?
The foundation of curiosity is good questions. And so the easiest way to embed this into your everyday is to go into a meeting and just note down, as you like, go into a meeting like you normally would, and just keep a little tally on your notebook of how many questions you ask in a meeting on average.
Love that.
And when you leave the meeting, say to yourself, right, by the end of the week, I want to improve that by 10%. I want to ask 10% more questions in meetings.
And is that because it's piquing your interest to understand, and to learn more? Yeah.
When you ask questions, so unfortunately, the way most of us work now, because we're trying to be productive and efficient, when someone else is speaking, we're not curious. We're sitting there thinking about what we're going to say in response to what is being said. That is not curiosity. That's having an opinion. So I would say have less opinions and ask more questions. That is curiosity. That is how you learn. That is how you grow. That is how you get your edge. So that is, I would just say, try and increase the amount of questions, track how many questions you ask in a meeting, and try and increase that number. Listen more than you speak. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Unfortunately, they're never used in that proportion for most of us, me included. And as a leader, how do you help cultivate a curious environment? Well, one, I would be sharing that little technique with teams and say, let's work on this as a team. Let's all try and get more curious and track our questions and see how it shows up. Like, I think that'd be a great team challenge.
Mm.
But the second thing is create space for it. And so one of the things, I mean, you could do this as a team meeting, have a think hour. I have a practice once a quarter called a think day.
Mm.
And it's a day where I can pick one thing that I'm curious about with no expectation of it delivering something.
Mm.
And I can just allow myself to curiously explore that topic and see where it takes me.
Mm.
And so we did this in KPMG as well as part of this challenge. So they were another client that we worked with on this curiosity challenge. And what was fascinating, there was a lot of grads in the room when we ran it. And a lot of them were curious about things in the outside world that they could bring back into the team and share. So we said, okay, go and do your curiosity hour, find everything that you can find out about it. And then let's, as a team, once a month, we'll allocate a spot for curiosity and people can come and present what they're curious about and how they're using it in their everyday. And so back then, you know, AI, there was a lot of curiosity about AI. So everyone went out and started doing all their research and then they brought it back in to build the team's capacity around that curious area.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think some of the issues, so stuff like that takes time and organizations want quick wins. So while you're talking about that, I was going against your rule of being curious because I was already thinking about what I was going to say, but I was actually exploring it. So I think you'd probably want to set up some, maybe even having some like think tanks or different areas of your business who are doing that at different stages, and then being able to kind of bring back and quantify the value that they're getting out of this methodology that's slowing down but being more focused as opposed to just doing the do, and being reactive. Yeah. So what's the value add for the organization when they take this slow down approach and being curious as opposed to what you talk about in terms of just kind of doing for the sake of being busy for busy's sake. Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had a popular talk for years called busy equals bullshit. And I've done it in every corporate from Microsoft through to Deloitte, through to the Department of Defense. So the reality is, if you think about the word busy, okay, and what it means, it contains no useful information. And what I've discovered again through my research is that more often than not, busy is code for something else. Busy doesn't mean I'm doing great work and I'm doing it all the time. Busy is often code when you unpack it with your people. And I know because I've done this in large rooms all around the world. It's often code for things like, I can't take any more on. I'm completely overwhelmed. I'm cooked, right? And so I would encourage people that are listening, if busy is a word that you use all the time, get curious about when you last said the word busy. Jump inside your head and ask yourself, what were you really saying? What was your busy code for? Because I'm guaranteeing you it's not busy. It's feeling. Yeah. And so unpack that. And the second thing I would say is challenge your relationship with the word busy. Get rid of the word busy from your vocabulary if you want to create space and watch what happens. Because busy doesn't open conversations, it closes them. A busy mind will go to anxiety. It is only a matter of time because the busier you tell yourself you are, the more you spin the hamster wheel in your head. Busy is the Achilles heel. And I think it's really interesting what you just said. And this is why I say productivity has become the disease. We are so focused on ticking boxes. We are so focused on getting the stuff done that we can get done that it has created a society that is very short-term focused. And unfortunately, that is, I would argue, is what has got us in the situation that we are in, be it from the climate change perspective, from the mental health perspective, because we're all just looking for the quick wins. But the long game, yeah, where we create the space for curiosity, for connecting with one another, for having different conversations, divergent conversations where we all don't agree, that is where we start to make the significant change that we actually need to shape a future that actually feels, I think, a little more kind, a little more inclusive, a little more compassionate, and a little less burnt out and overwhelmed. but it goes against the grain of everything that we are wired for in the current environment.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious when you say that, and you were talking earlier about we go through different stages of what we think is achievable. So like as you've gone on your journey, you've grown. So if you were to articulate to yourself, you're 15, yourself who started this journey 15 years ago, where you're at now, you wouldn't have believed it because you're a different person now. You've made a lot more space, your thinking's different, what you've achieved. So you've done those micro steps to get to where you are now. So looking at it through your brain, your eyes, and when you think about the future and what it could look like in terms of like the like your purple unicorn, or like what could it look like if everyone, not everyone, but if there was a group of, if there was continuing to be work in this space and understanding this and understanding ourselves as humans and moving it forward, what could it look like in utopia?
Oh, utopia. Well, look, I don't know about utopia, because I think at the end of the day, you know, some humans will always prioritize ego and power, you know, over the rest of us, and that's okay. And we all have egos, and you know, we all like to have them stroked occasionally. But I'm talking from a leadership perspective. What I'm extremely curious about at the moment, and I wrote an article, I think a week or so ago in Women's Agenda called "The Traits Women Get Punished for Today Are the Leadership Edge of Tomorrow." And so I am doing, so I can share the link with you to drop with this if that's helpful. But basically, I'm doing my thesis in psychology at the moment. It is on compassionate decision making because I am extremely curious about compassion and the role that it has to play in leadership. And many people wouldn't connect the two words. What I stumbled across, again, because I zigzag, and I got really curious about compassion as well, because it's what Gabor Mate taught me in my trauma training. Compassion is central to helping us process trauma and alleviate it. So what I started to do was do a lot of research around the connection between compassion and leadership. And would you believe there is a lot out of Harvard around a theoretical model that has been empirically proven called wise compassionate leadership. And it's called it's basically doing hard things the human way. There is a brilliant book on it. And basically this model of leadership speaks to how I see so many women wanting to lead, trying to lead, but getting punished for leading that way. And so what I hope for the future is that wise, compassionate leadership actually becomes a gold standard that is known in how we want to lead in places of power and influence. And that enables more women to step up and own their space in those positions of power and influence. And I think it's so interesting. Like I say, this was not even on my radar 2 years ago. I studied with Gabor. I then got my thesis topic, which was all around compassionate decision making. So again, this is like do aligned work, and all these cards start to fall into place. Then I stumble across this wise, compassionate leadership. I decide to write an article for Women's Agenda on the topic. Here's how this plays out when you do aligned work. And yes, I'm 10 years down the track, but this happens to me all the time now. It never happened to me when I was back in my old life. That article was picked up, I don't know how, by the Compassionate Leadership Institute out of New York, which is the governing body that runs compassionate leadership training globally. They have an unbelievable faculty. They grabbed my article, they published it on LinkedIn to their 10,000 followers and tagged me in. And I was like, you know what? I think what they're doing is amazing. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm going to reach out to them and ask them if they will meet with me, because I'd love to bring this to Australia. I did that. I thanked them for the article. I said, would you meet with me? Would you be open to collaborations? We're connecting tomorrow morning to start that conversation. Now, I don't know where it'll go, but 3 weeks ago, none of this was in my plan, but it's never felt more aligned. That's a zigzag.
Yeah. And when you talk about women being, so is it just women exclusively when you're talking about this compassionate leadership?
No.
No, okay.
No, so the study is across women and men. There's plenty of men that actually embody this
Wanting
as
to, yeah,
well.
yeah.
What I'm saying is what I see in my work, because I work with high-performing females
Yeah.
in corporate and in entrepreneurship, and
Yeah.
I love working across the two. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But what I see is that women tend to embody naturally more of the traits that bring compassionate leadership to the fore.
Yeah.
And they are the things in the past that women were, like I say, punished for. Oh, you're too vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're too emotional. You lead with your heart too much. You take too much time with people. But I'll drop that link to the article in the
Yeah.
chat if anyone's interested, because the research is fascinating.
Yeah, so interesting. We might actually have you come back on to discuss that as well. So lastly, if anyone wants to ask any questions, just quickly pop them in the Q&A. I'll have a quick look in a sec if there's anything that we haven't covered. But you can also, when we finish up here, Penny can let you know where you can find her as well to continue this conversation as well offline. But just lastly, if you had to do it all again, knowing what you know now, what are the key areas that you'd focus on to get the biggest impact towards where you wanted to be or where you want to be?
Oh, that's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that. What would I focus on? I would focus, yeah. So I would have, and I did do it, but I think the problem is wisdom's a good thing to have, right? I'm coming at this now with a wise mind, 10 years on. I would start, like I say, with impact. What is the impact I want to have on who and why? That is the first thing. I would embrace experimentation and this concept of the zigzag. I would look it up. Dan Pink posted on LinkedIn about it the other week. He's got a YouTube video on it, and it gives you permission to not, like, letting go. And I'm a recovering people-pleasing perfectionist, but letting go of the need for things to be perfect. I would have gone back and studied psychology a lot earlier. I started studying psychology in COVID, and I'll be qualified when I'm 51. So I'm 50 this year. So I've got another 12 months to go. So I probably would have done that earlier. But again, I don't think I could have got there. I wasn't. Look, I just think the journey is the journey. And whatever your journey is meant to be, it will be. But allow yourself permission to experiment. Surround yourself with people who are trying to do the same things. It's why I created Impact Makers, which is a program I've created for women who want to make an impact through their careers, because there's so many of them doing amazing things, but actually bringing them together, and they're completely diverse in terms of the industries that they work in. They're entrepreneurs and they're executives, and it's basically this little melting pot where I teach them the practices to do this stuff in their everyday, so that the opportunities just start coming, the opportunities that they've struggled to land in those places of power and influence. So find your people. It's really important, because you are going to question yourself. You are going to wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh my God, I must be crazy. No one else is doing this. Or maybe it feels like it's not working.
Yeah.
And
you mentioned that at the start. Like you said, when you reached out, you like started surrounding yourself with people, and then it kind of took off from there. And you're right. Like in terms of, I think we've obviously, like I think you're amazing. And everything that you talk about, I always walk away just having to research so much more from all the key things that you kind of highlight, because you can go into like there's a lot there. But I think with our community as well, a lot of the HR, our HR community, a lot of females, we need to hear this, but also we're in a position, or they're in a position, where they can then not only take and apply what you're talking about to their lives, but then they can take it into organizations and chip away at applying it there, to then have a knock-on effect to everyone within that organization. And that's, I guess, something that we want to try and bring to our community as well, for that wider change. So I really appreciate you coming on here. Like you said, when you reached out to individual or to subject matter experts in your field when you first started out, when I reached out to you, I didn't think that you would reply to me, and you did. And I'm just grateful that you're here, and we've got to to learn from you and for you to share this with our community as well. So thank you so much, Penny.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, Bianca. I could talk about it all day, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, me too. So if anyone wants to kind of find you, post this or get in touch, how would they do that?
Yeah, so I'm pretty prolific on the old LinkedIn, so please connect with me on LinkedIn. Do not be afraid. Love a connection. If you're based in Melbourne, don't be surprised if you do connect on LinkedIn. If I reach out and say, let's go for a chat, I'm a big advocate this year of taking the online offline, because I think we do need more human connection. You'll also find me on my website, which is hackinghappy.co.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, Penny.
Thanks, Bianca.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. See ya.